So Myles Garrett, he is requesting a trade from Cleveland. We went over this when it first was announced, and I thought honestly it'd be this kind of situation where the Browns would be like, "Look, this sucks for us, but you've given us so much that we will try to trade you." But Tom Pelissero reported on Blue Sky that Brown star Myles Garrett recently requested a meeting with owner Jimmy Haslam, who's declined to speak amidst Garrett's trade request per sources. Cleveland refuses to even discuss a trade, while Garrett is prepping to miss games if he is not traded. So, what do you do normally when a star player is disgruntled as an NFL owner? Well, usually star players are disgruntled because they're not making as much money as they believe that they should be. So oftentimes this can be remedied simply by providing a raise, more guaranteed money, changing up the contract for the star player. We saw this a lot, as a Dolphins fan with Xavier Howard, who was initially given the biggest contract for cornerbacks in the league. And then when he would get passed by other players, the Dolphins would often sweeten the deal in order to keep their star cornerback happy. So that's what I'm sure some point Jimmy Haslam, the Browns owners, were thinking would be all that needed to be done to keep Myles Garrett in town. However, he made clear in his statement that this is not a move about money for Myles Garrett. This is a move about trying to win a Super Bowl, something that he does not believe the Cleveland Browns are capable of at this point. And I am inclined to agree with him. They are in such a bad situation with Deshaun Watson as their quarterback, who just tore his Achilles again, and then had his contract reworked to try to free up some space for the Browns to probably try to get another quarterback, whether that's through the draft or through free agency. But needless to say, that giant contract, even as it's been renegotiated, has caused issues for the Cleveland Browns, and it still does. So the talent that the Browns are able to get outside of the quarterback situation, which, if you've been watching, he hasn't been that talented since he's gone to Cleveland, is not as good as it possibly could be, with the exceptions of players like Myles Garrett, who is, of course, an all pro defensive player of the year and just an all around incredibly talented individual. So I see where he is probably looking at this team and thinking, there's just no way this team is going to seriously compete for a Super Bowl before my career is over. He's already like 30 years old, and he's just thinking like, I need to get out of Cleveland. As much as I loved it, as dominant as I've been, and if I stayed here, I probably would become a Hall of Famer. I'd become a Hall of Famer in a similar way to like Joe Thomas, right? Who stayed his entire career in Cleveland, was the best left tackle pretty much his entire career, and he never made the playoffs. He has nothing to show for it in terms of on the field accomplishments with the team. He has tons of personal accolades, as does Garrett, and he has a Hall of Fame jacket, as probably will Garrett. But I can also see why the Browns would be disinclined to go with Garrett's, request here, because obviously they have no leverage now. Any team that they're negotiating with knows that he has requested a trade. He wants to leave. And so the negotiating power lies with the teams that the Browns are trying to negotiate with. So I would imagine this is why Jimmy Haslam is quite upset. He doesn't want to lose Myles Garrett. Why would you? Great player. And if he's going to lose Myles Garrett, he knows that he's going to have to take somewhat of a loss on trading Myles Garrett. And for that reason, he doesn't want to meet with Myles Garrett at all, which I do think is childish. But I do see why he would be upset about the situation. Granted, I can also see why Myles Garrett might be upset with the situation in Cleveland for himself as a player who has put his blood, sweat, tears, and accomplished so much for the team without ownership and coaches being good enough to get the team to accomplish much as a team. So Very interesting situation developing in Cleveland. Will this get so far out of hand that Garrett straight up misses games? And then would even that be enough for the Browns and Jimmy Haslam to change his mind and attempt to trade him? We shall see what happens there, but I'd love to know your thoughts about this entire situation in the comments.